I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to the Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, I'm very pleased to be talking to Ben Smith, chef and owner of Tsunami Restaurant, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. So stay with us for a conversation with Ben. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So did you, when you started Tsunami 25 years ago, did you think, oh yeah, this is going forever? This 25 years,
No,
definitely.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I thought if I make it 5 years, I'll be doing good.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had a basic exit plan of I'll run this for 5 years, either run it into the ground or sell it, and move on and be done with this aspect.
Yeah.
But no, I never anticipated this long of a run.
It's interesting to think about that 25 years. As I was kind of getting ready for this, I moved here. It's either 27 or 28 years ago. And we were joking about Kevin Keogh, who will love that he got a mention in this. But Kevin Keogh of Cafe Keogh, Bar Keogh, and formerly of Automatic Slims and Beauty Shop and so on. All that was on et cetera. A couple, I'm sure there's something important I left out and he'll tell me about it. But, you know, when I moved here, there was, and I'm not picking on anybody, but because of and we can talk about why, but there were very few really interesting local restaurants in Memphis. And I had somebody explain to me that went back to liquor by the drink. For so many decades, you couldn't do liquor by the drink in a restaurant. And so restaurants really really kind of fine dining can't make it without the liquor. So there just wasn't this legacy. There was lots of cool, grungy food that might kill you that was really good to eat, but there wasn't really good, careful, fine dining, however you want to characterize that. Automatic Slims opened a year or two after I moved here, and it was like, oh, wow, there's cool, interesting food. And then Tsunami, in my memory, was the next one, that suddenly there was this cool place with cool food that was food that you could get. Like, I had moved here from New York. It was food like you could get in New York. And so I would think that my joke of, did you think you'd make it 25 years, given how it was pretty groundbreaking. There wasn't this culture we have now of all these different really great restaurants, right?
Yeah.
So it could have just seemed like, oh my God, I'm going to make it 6 months and be done.
Yeah. When I opened Tsunami, 1998, goodness gracious, I'd been back in Memphis for a couple of years, been working other places, and I came back to Memphis every once in a while to check out the restaurant scene, and see what was coming and what was happening. And I'd gotten to a point again where I feel like I'd hit a ceiling and just there was no room for growth. And that kind of speaks to the dearth of good restaurants available in Memphis. And I needed that challenge. I needed to grow. I needed to learn. And it just wasn't happening. Yeah. So I was on the verge of leaving Memphis again and going out who knows where to work. And at the encouragement of friends and family, and of course everybody says this when you're a chef and you've been working in the industry for a while, you should open your own restaurant. Ridiculous advice. But so I found myself at this crossroads of I either leave Memphis again or open a restaurant. And I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. But I did it. I'd like to say I did it with a chip on my shoulder. Yeah. And I decided if I was going to open a restaurant, it was going to be the kind of restaurant that I would want to eat in. Yep. Serving the kind of food I like to prepare and work with, and the kind of food I like to eat, and the environment I like to be in, surrounded by the kind of people I like to work with. And I told myself, if this doesn't work, then under my terms, and I fully expected it not to, I figured this is going to be the determining factor of whether I stay in Memphis or go out again. Yeah. And so I very purposefully said, I'm going to do it my way. And if it doesn't work, then that's the sign that I need to leave again. Yeah. But it worked. Yeah. And
where had you been? Well, did you grow up here originally?
Born and raised here in Memphis. Okay. Product of public schools. Went to and then graduated from high school at Central High, and watched all my friends go off to college. I didn't go to college. I kind of stayed in Memphis and got the easiest employment available at the time, which is working in restaurants.
Gotcha.
You know, and I washed dishes, I bussed tables, was a bar back, prep cook. I did all the things. And then ended up working for a couple at La Tourelle restaurant, the original La Tourelle restaurant.
Yeah.
And they were both graduates of the Culinary Institute of America.
Yeah.
And they kind of saw some potential in me and said, you should apply to CIA. And I did. So I went to CIA and then did my externship from CIA in San Francisco at a little boutique hotel in Lower Pacific Heights. Went back and finished school. Went back to San Francisco because I loved San Francisco. Worked there for 3 years for Star's restaurant for a chef named Jeremiah Tower, who was one of the leading chefs in the California cuisine movement in the late 80s, 90s. Worked there for 3 years. Took some time off, traveled, spent 6 months traveling in the South Pacific, worked for a little while in Australia, came back to California, got a call from my old roommate at culinary school who was in Hawaii and said they're looking for people to work at this new resort.
Yeah.
So I went to Hawaii, worked there for 3 years, and then came back to Memphis. And then that was the last sort of what's happening in Memphis.
So I didn't know that story at all. I didn't know anything about that. And it is interesting. And so, because Tsunami has this kind of, that was part of it. It made a lot of sense to me as somebody who grew up in the Northwest and had spent a fair amount of time in Northern California and Seattle,
right?
And all that kind of approach to food and seafood that isn't a seafood restaurant, right? It's just that kind of must have, obviously being in Hawaii, being in San Francisco, all that clearly influenced what you did with Tsunami.
Huge influence. Yeah. All that. And really, I think the first trigger for me was going to culinary school and one of the classes, Asian cuisine unfairly was like they lumped all the Asian cuisines into one short
the
class.
One Asian cuisine.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But actually having authentic Japanese and Thai cuisine for the first time and Chinese was really mind blowing for me. Really opened up my mind and my palate. And the rest of the program there was at the time, very, very French focused technique and style and cuisine. And I wasn't really motivated by that as much. And I found this, and then I got to California and got more Asian influence, fell in love with Chinatown and then of course Hawaii was huge, tremendous exposure to seafood, plethora of seafood. Fish I'd never seen before, never heard of before.
What was it like working in a big resort? Pros and cons, I guess, right?
Yeah. It's like working any place that's rigorous rules and regulations. I didn't thrive under those conditions.
Yeah.
I lasted 3 years.
It seems like a long time, actually.
It is.
Given where you are now with a very independent, very particular, you run, like you said, I want to do my own thing, run my own show. You got your own restaurant, and then you've been a cog in what I assume is sort of a cog in a big wheel of a resort food service kind of thing. Yeah,
it wasn't a huge resort though. It wasn't huge, so it had that going for it.
Yeah.
But it was still not the environment I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
I was real excited about the food, and I had the position I had is I had mostly saute station, which all the fish specials came off of that station. But I was also the roundsman, which means I filled in for everybody else on their day off. So I worked all the stations, but my main focus was on saute.
Yeah.
And it was tremendous, experience.
Yeah.
Working with a new fish every day, 2 new fish every day.
Yeah.
And a changing menu every single day.
Oh, God, yeah. Wow.
And that really put me through the paces and really made me realize the potential for recreating that later.
Right. Again, we're talking to Ben Smith of the chef and owner at Tsunami, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. in Memphis, we talked about sort of the lay of the land. I left out La Tourelle, and I left out others that were around back then. But again, sort of in my experience was this first Automatic Slims, the original, real Automatic Slims. Then I think Beauty Shop came after you. Is that
Beauty Shop was
right after?
I think 5 years after me.
Yeah, because they just did their 20th anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then over time, there's just been this explosion of restaurants in Memphis, and I think that's a national thing, right? I mean, I go back home.
Yeah.
You know, everywhere I am, it's really striking. You can get, if you look for it, you can get really good food in most any city now, which was not always the case in some cities. I mean, it just wasn't like that, right? I mean, is that your experience too? I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I don't know what to attribute that to, but I think it's great. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think, back in the day, you had to travel to experience good, creative, and even authentic food.
Right.
And I think it's great because it sort of raises the bar for everybody, and it makes everybody have to become more authentic. And, when people have traveled a lot and been to other cities and tasted real, Mexican cuisine or Cuban cuisine or French cuisine or whatever, Japanese cuisine, and they come back home and make those comparisons to what's available, yeah, you got to raise the bar. You have to live up to more higher standards,
right? And I guess that creates a culture of people who want that, who want to go to not the local chain. You don't.
Yeah, the demand has
all
to be there. The demand has to be there. You can't. And I've seen, some places that are a little bit too far ahead of their time and too ambitious.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work. The climate has to be right.
Yeah.
And that's why I kept coming back to Memphis and checking the climate and seeing what was going on before I finally committed to opening a restaurant.
Right. I'll tell you a ridiculous story. But so I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, south of Seattle, and haven't lived there since I was 18, but have visited a ton and family and friends and all that. And every time we're there, we go to this place called the Lobster Shop, and it's down on the water. It's a beautiful view. It is perfectly fine. It is like, it's not that good. It's not, but you can get some basic seafood stuff and a basic steak and a basic whatever, and this incredible view of the bay. And we always go there. And one of the last times we were there, we were going to go there. And my girlfriend, Leslie, who you met just recently when we were at Tsunami. And she goes, can we go? I mean, did you guys ever go anywhere else when you're in Tacoma? And my brother and I are like, no, this is where I don't know. There's nothing else really to eat here. Because we have these 30-year-old perceptions of Tacoma. Well, she gets on her phone about 10 seconds later. She goes, well, what about any of these places? And we're like, well, we didn't know about those, because it's our hometown. And we go to this Italian place that is just great food. I mean, really good, interesting, careful food. And we're sitting there eating. My brother and I looking at each other like, we're just idiots because we're just in this habit of going to this place. And for me, that you can get food like that in Tacoma, which you could not get 30 years ago. And now there are numerous places like that. They're kind of as symbolic of how this has all changed.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people have a pattern and they go to places that they're familiar with and comfortable with.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that's changed is not just availability, but that people's willingness to try new things and expand their experiences.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to go to their regular, comfort places, nostalgic places, which is great. And those places have a spot. Right. And they're valuable, but I think as more people travel and experience more, they're more likely to be more open-minded.
Absolutely. Let me do some quick housekeeping. We'll come back, continue talking to Ben Smith, chef and owner of Tsunami. But I'll remind everyone, I'm Eric Barnes, and this is the Sidebar. Airs here on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. Focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's not just a radio show. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Behind the Headlines podcast, Bill Drees and Sam Hardiman's Politics podcast, On the Record, the Memphis Grizzlies podcast with Chris Harrington and Drew Hill, and Jennifer Biggs and Chris Harrington's food podcast, Soundbites, which also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the Sidebar. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the WYXR shows, that's this one and Soundbites, at WYXR.org, or you can go and download the WYXR app. You can get all the talk shows, not just these. You can also get archives of all the music shows there. I should also remind everyone that WYXR is nonprofit, listener-supported radio. So if you can, become a member, support the WYXR, you get a bunch of great member benefits. You can go to the website and learn about that, or you can just do a one-off donation. All of it goes to keeping this radio station going. Recently, we had Otis Sanford on the show talking about journalism, a life in journalism, talking some about the upcoming 5-year anniversary of the Daily Memphian. We also had Jeff Calkins on talking about his shift from sports, but talked just a bit about, we just got into all kinds of other things, but Calkins and I talked about the 5-year anniversary, which is in September of this year, will be 5 years. And we'll have more folks from the Daily Memphian coming on. We also recently just had a couple of folks from the Brooks. They have an exhibit coming up. They're beginning to pull art and history and all kinds of stuff together on Memphis College of Art, which sadly went under, closed its doors back, I think, in 2020 during COVID. And so we recently did a show on that. There's information about if you have a connection to Memphis College of Art, they want to hear from you. And as they put that whole exhibit together for 2024. I mentioned Behind the Headlines, which we do with over on WKNO. And we recently had Frank Colvette, a mayoral candidate and city councilman. We had Steve Mulroy, the DA, on. We recently had Mayor Palazzolo from Germantown and Brent Taylor, the state senator. And we have more Memphis mayoral candidates coming up over the coming weeks as we move towards early voting in September. Last but not least, our small business seminar, 3 of our business seminars are coming up in the fall: Small Biz, Developing Memphis, and Commercial Real Estate. Small Biz is the first. It's on August 24th at 3:30. You can go to Eventbrite and search for Daily Memphian to get tickets to that. Again, coming up August 24th at 3:30. But we're here with Ben Smith, chef and owner of Tsunami. One thing that's really interesting about Tsunami is, and it's interesting, you talk about, I wanted to do the restaurant my way. I wanted to do it. And if it wasn't going to work, then, it wasn't going to work. And you've also, somehow that also relates in my mind, at least, to one, consistency of people who go there. I've been going there for 25 years, but and lots of people there, there are a lot of regulars. And I assume there's also a lot of people who've never been there, but you have had, especially for a restaurant, really consistent staff.
Yeah.
They must like you, or they must tolerate you well. Or something in between. But it's notable. Karen's the same way at Beauty Shop.
Yeah.
I mean, she's had people there for a long time. And
Yeah.
it speaks well of y'all that you're able to do that.
Well, I think that's certainly key. And I will absolutely go on a record to say that we didn't get 25 years old without a lot of help. I didn't do this by myself. I've had some amazing people over the years. I've had long-term employees that have been integral to the success of this place. My lead chef, Kevin Sullivan, 21 years with me. Started as a dishwasher in high school, and he's been with me ever since. Worked his way all the way up to the top. Also, some of the best people in this business started out as dishwashers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's another important aspect of it. A lot of these people have worked their way up from the ground up. And I think part of it is having a very clearly defined business model that you share with your staff, and also developing a strong culture and trusting your staff, including your staff. We have tremendous communication. I rely on my staff constantly for feedback and their opinions. And if it doesn't get past my staff, it doesn't get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And we do a weekly lineup with the new specials, the new menu we change every week. And through that development of culture and business model and parameter of what we do on the menu, and giving that sense of trust to your staff, they're going to give you honest feedback.
Yeah.
They're not shy to say, this doesn't work. This is absolutely not
right
Tsunami quality. And I think that's real important.
Yeah.
That's extremely important.
And then coming off COVID, which obviously blew up the world, but the front lines of that in many ways were restaurants, the service industry, and so many restaurants that closed or they've come back, but they're still at limited hours because they can't hire. But you all, I mean, talk about how you survived COVID as a business, and what you see in other restaurants, because you're kind of back to normal, it feels like. You may not be, and you can tell me that, but it feels, as a patron, it feels like you're back to normal, where that is not the case with a lot of restaurants. But again, how'd you survive it, and what's your take on the post-COVID landscape?
Well,
for restaurants?
COVID was hugely impactful to this industry, every industry really, but especially I think to us because I'm in it. But I think again, this is all a tribute to my staff in this situation. We saw early on how things are going with COVID. We saw early on, and we sensed that this is big. This is going to be big. This is going to be impactful. And had a meeting with the staff before the mandate came down to close dining rooms.
Yeah.
And I told my staff, the whole staff, look, starting tomorrow, we're going to switch models. We're going to shut down the dining room. We're going to go immediately into curb service, takeout, delivery model.
Yeah.
We're going to modify the menu. And to their credit, every member of the staff, there was no pushback. Every single one of them was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what that looked like, what it was going to do.
Because that is
what we were going to
Tsunami.
do.
For those who haven't been there, you would not think it was a place. Not that you didn't have takeout, but it was not really a thing.
No, it scared me to death, knowing that, what the creative process for me entails, flavors, textures, colors, presentation on the plate, what's seasonal, what's available. So now all of a sudden I had to add to that mix all of this, plus how is this going to travel? How is this going to make it from the restaurant into a box to somebody's house and still have, the impact, that culinary impact. And that frightened me. But the next day, everybody came in and showed up and like, okay, what are we doing?
Right.
And we figured it out, and we made a lot of mistakes, and we learned a lot. But mostly we learned that we are resilient and we're going to do whatever it takes. We didn't lose any staff.
Yeah, I was thinking.
We kept everybody on board.
That's amazing.
In fact, I gave the whole front of the house staff a raise, which didn't say much because servers make $2.13 an hour.
Right.
But I brought them up to $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And our regular clientele showed up in droves and were very generous. And my servers were very well compensated during that period.
Do you think for the restaurants, and I'm not picking on anybody, I'm just you don't have to name anybody, but you think the industry, like you talked about how many people have started as dishwashers, right? I mean, do you think there's kind of going to be a big gap in the sort of progression of people through this industry that you've spent your life in because so many people got out, right? Or was that maybe more the chain restaurants that really took the hit? It seems like it's a mix of the chain restaurants, of local restaurants, and what are there long-term ramifications for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think this industry will ever be the same. I don't think we'll ever totally recover from this. I think what I feel happened is that there was a tremendous moment of introspection when dining rooms closed down and when people got laid off or had their hours cut. They spent more time at home. They had more time to reflect on what they were doing. And I think a lot of people were like, is this worth my energy? Yeah. Am I getting enough out of this to make it worth what I put into it? Because
it's a really hard job.
The hours, a lot. It takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. And I think a lot of people decided, no, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who initially were like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've lost hours. I've been laid off or whatever, found other options and much better options for them. I think the highly visible sort of transition of what's happened in this industry has not done anything to help people where 10 years ago, people were so excited about working in the restaurant. Everybody wanted to work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
We were turning people away.
Really?
And
wild.
everybody wanted to be a chef, because the chefs were the new rock stars. Now,
Right.
It's like nobody wants to. They've seen behind the swinging doors, and they're like,
yeah,
nobody wants to do that, man.
That's wild. Just a couple of minutes left here. Where do you go to eat? I kind of know because I see you around, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, where did some of your besides Tsunami, some of your favorite restaurants in Memphis?
I eat a lot of ethnic, like almost every Sunday. I eat dim sum, Dim Sum King. It's just recently changed names.
Yeah.
I like to have a lot of small plates. I like to have a lot of things. I don't like the standard appetizer, entree, dessert thing. I like to have all the bites in front of me. So dim sum is perfect for me.
I will say we were just in San Sebastian. So, like the whole tapas, or I can't say it in the Spanish way, but it's great because you're just eating all these little bites of stuff. It's so much fun to eat.
To me, is the best way to eat. So I don't eat out in a whole lot of different places. I like to support some of my fellow restaurateurs. Yeah. I eat at Karen's place a lot. I eat at Bari.
Yeah. What are some of your guilty pleasure foods, if you'll even name? I mean, foods that you'd be slightly embarrassed to admit that you like to eat.
Oh my God. So many.
Like a frozen pizza?
Potato chips. Chefs have the worst eating habits of all. Frozen Reese's Pieces. I mean, I've had potato chips for dinner on numerous occasions. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We're around amazing food all day long, and the joke is there's never anything to eat here. And we get home where there's really not anything to eat, and we make really bad choices.
Yeah. I had a bunch of other questions, but we really are actually out of time. But again, we've been talking with Ben Smith, the chef and owner of Tsunami. I try to ask everybody at the end of the show, what was your first concert?
First concert, David Bowie.
Nice.
The Spiders from Mars, the original band, 1973. I was 11 years old.
Nice. Where was that?
It was the Auditorium North Hall. I don't even know if that exists anymore. He did 2 shows. Not only did I see the show, but I got to meet David Bowie because my dad did a series of paintings based on David Bowie's Space Oddity album, and somehow convinced him to come to the Art Academy.
Yeah.
Which
College of Art.
Used to be Art Academy. Now it's MCA. Now it's gone. But
right.
So I got to meet him and the band, Mick Ronson, all the original Spiders from Mars.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, Ben Smith, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We are out of time, though. Reminder, if you missed any of the Sidebar, you can get it at wyxr.org or on the Daily Memphian site, or you can get it at iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.